Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. Myself Dr. K. Srinivas Reddy, Assistant Professor of Botany, Government Degree College for Women, Nalgonda. In my previous videos, I have explained cell wall, structure of cell wall, chemical nature of cell wall, ultrastructure of the cell wall, and the functions of cell wall. In this session, I am going to explain one of the important and quite interesting topic, and which is also very important for your competitive examinations, which you are going to appear after completion of your graduation. So let us start the session. Okay, in this video I am going to give you a detailed account of biological membrane, which is the second topic of your fifth paper, that is cell biology and genetics. This topic, biological membrane, will be discussed under the following headings: definition of biological membrane, chemical composition of biological membrane, structure of biological membrane, and functions of biological membrane. In this video, I am going to cover definition of biological membrane and chemical composition of biological membrane, and structure of biological membrane and functions of biological membrane will be covered in coming videos. Okay, here I am going to tell you about two types of biological membranes. They are plasma membrane and cell membrane. Plasma membrane and cell membrane. What is plasma membrane and what is cell membrane? Plasma membrane is a thin layer which covered the cytoplasm of the cell. Plasma membrane is the thin layer which cover the cytoplasm of the cell in both plants and animals. Plasma membrane is present in both plants and animals, but cell wall is not present in animals, as I told you in my previous video. Plasma membrane separates the cytoplasm, or you can say protoplasm, from the cell wall in case of plants. Plasma membrane separates the protoplasm from the cell membrane. Physically, it separates protoplasm from the cell membrane. Plasma membrane is also known as plasma lemma. Plasma membrane is also known as plasma lemma. When come to cell membrane is a thin layer which covers cell organelles, like mitochondria, Golgi complex, plastids, endoplasmic reticulum, etc. organs. So these cell organelles are covered by a thin layer which is known as cell membrane. Plasma membrane and cell membrane collectively known as biological membranes. Plasma membrane and cell membrane collectively known as biological membranes. So these biological membranes act as selectively permeable membranes or differentially permeable membranes. Plasma membrane is a selectively permeable membrane or differentially permeable membrane. So what is a selective permeable membrane and what is a differentially permeable membrane? So these two functions I will explain in the topic of functions of plasma membrane. Okay. Let us coming to the chemical composition of plasma membrane. Chemically, plasma membrane is a lipoprotein membrane. It means it is made up of lipids and proteins. Plasma membrane is made up of lipids and proteins. Plasma membrane is mainly consisting of lipids and proteins, hence it is called as lipoprotein membrane. The ratio of proteins to lipids in the plasma membrane varies from 1:0.8 to 1:4. The ratio of proteins to lipids in a plasma membrane varies from 1:0.8 to 1:4. The variation in the ratio of proteins to lipids in the plasma membrane is mainly depends on the type of the membrane, type of the cell, and type of the organism. The ratio is not constant. The ratio is not constant, which varies from membrane to membrane, cell to cell, and organism to organism. In addition to the lipids, other constituents are also present in the plasma membrane. Other constituents like DNA, RNA, mainly carbohydrates, DNA and RNA, salicylic acid, etc. Other constituents are also present in the plasma membrane. All these chemical constituents held together in a thin, pliable film-like structure. All these chemical constituents are held together or arranged together in the thin film-like pliable sheet. The thickness of this sheet measures about 75 angstroms. Here you can see in the picture, this is the layer of plasma membrane of about 75 angstroms in thickness. Plasma membrane consists of three layers. Lipid bilayer is present at the middle of the plasma membrane. On either side of the lipid bilayer, two protein layers are also present. Here you can see these red lines are lipid molecules. They are arranged in two rows in the middle of the plasma membrane, and the thickness of the lipid layer, or you can say bilipid layer, which is about 35 angstroms in thickness. On either side of the lipid layer, protein layers are present. Each layer measures about 20 angstroms in thickness. Altogether, the thickness of the layer or plasma membrane is 75 angstroms in thickness. So in this way, lipids and proteins are important constituents of the plasma membrane. As I told you before, just before, lipids and proteins are very, very important constituents of plasma membrane. Okay. Here I am going to tell you about lipids. When come to lipids, lipids are the important constituents of the plasma membrane. Lipids constitute 40% of the total chemical constituents of the plasma membrane. Lipids constitute 40% of the total chemical constituents of the plasma membrane. There are three different types of lipids present in the plasma membrane. Three types of lipids present in the plasma membrane. They are: number one, phospholipids; number two, glycolipids; number three, sterols. Three different types of lipids present in the plasma membrane: phospholipids, glycolipids, sterols. Let us discuss about the phospholipids. Phospholipids. Phospholipids are in more proportion when compared to other types of lipids. When compared to glycolipids and sterols, phospholipids are present in more proportion. And there are three different types of phospholipids are present in the plasma membrane. Namely, they are lecithin, choline, and cephalin. Three different types of phospholipids present in the plasma membrane. Namely, lecithin, choline, cephalin. Lecithin, choline, cephalin. Phospholipid molecules are made up of glycerol, fatty acids, phosphoric acids, complex of sphingosine. Phospholipids are made up of glycerol, fatty acids, phosphoric acid, and complex of sphingosine. When you see the structure of a phospholipid molecule, it looks like this. Each phospholipid molecule has two parts. One is head and another one is tail. Here you can see in the picture, this is the head portion of a phospholipid molecule, and this is the tail portion of phospholipid molecule. Head portion is made up of phosphate and tail portion is made up of fatty acids. Head portion is made up of phosphate molecule and tail portions are made up of fatty acids. Head portion is hydrophilic in nature and tail portion is hydrophobic in nature. Head portion is hydrophilic in nature, it means it is water loving, and this tail portion is hydrophobic, it means water hating portion. This is in this way this molecule has both hydrophobic portion and hydrophilic portion, so that this molecule is known as amphipathic molecule. If a molecule has both hydrophobic and hydrophilic natures or portions, then that molecule is known as amphipathic molecule. Here phospholipid molecules are amphipathic in nature. When come to glycolipids, glycolipids are made up of sugar with alcohol and sphingosine. Sugar with alcohol, fatty acids and sphingosine. Glycolipids are present in two forms in the plasma membrane. They are present in the form of either cerebrosides or gangliosides. Glycolipids are present in the form of cerebrosides or gangliosides. Next, sterols. Third type of lipids are sterols. Sterols are steroid alcohols. Sterols are steroid alcohols. The common examples of sterols are cholesterol, phytosterol, ergosterol. Sterols are present in three forms: cholesterol, phytosterol, ergosterol. Cholesterol is the sterol which is present in animals. The sterol which is present in the animal is known as cholesterol. The sterol which is present in the plants are known as phytosterol. The sterol which is present in ergot and yeast are known as ergosterol. Sterols are steroid alcohols. The common examples of sterols are cholesterol, phytosterol, and ergosterol. Cholesterols are present in animals, phytosterols are present in plants, Ergosterols are present in ergot and yeast. Yeah, here you can see in this picture very clearly. Here you can see the red lines. This is one row of red lines and this is another row of red line. These are the phospholipid molecules. Phospholipid molecules are arranged in two rows in the middle of the plasma membrane and form a bilipid layer which is about 35 angstroms in thickness. Phospholipid molecules are arranged in two rows at the center or in the middle of the plasma membrane and form a bilipid layer of about 35 angstroms thickness. On either side of this bilipid layer, protein layer is present. Protein layer is present. So in this way, cholesterols play an important role in the structure of plasma membrane. So lipids play an important role in the structure of plasma membrane. There are three types of lipids present in the plasma membrane: phospholipids, glycolipids, sterols. There are three types of phospholipids: lecithin, choline, cephalin. Phospholipids are made up of glycerol, fatty acids, phosphoric acids, and complex of sphingosine. Glycolipids, sugar is present in addition to fatty acid and sphingosine. In glycolipids, sugar molecule is also present in addition to fatty acids and sphingosine. Glycolipids are present either in the form of cerebrosides or gangliosides. Sterols are steroid alcohols. The common examples of sterols are cholesterol, phytosterol, ergosterol. The common examples of sterols are cholesterol, phytosterol, ergosterol. Cholesterol are present in animals, phytosterols are present in plants, ergosterol is present in ergot and yeasts. Here, lipid molecules have amphipathic in nature. It means they have both hydrophobic portions as well as hydrophilic portions within a molecule. So these type of molecules are known as amphipathic molecules. All these lipid molecules are amphipathic in nature. For example, here you take phospholipid molecule. Phospholipid molecule has two portions. One is head portion, another one is tail portion. Head portion is made up of phosphate molecule and tail portions are made up of fatty acids. Head portion is hydrophilic in nature and tail portions are hydrophobic in nature. Head portion is hydrophilic in nature, tail portions are hydrophobic in nature. So these are the main lipids that are involved in the structure of plasma membrane. Next, we are going to discuss about the proteins. Coming to the proteins, proteins represents one of the main and significant fractions of plasma membrane. Proteins constitute 50% in the construction of plasma membrane. There are three types of proteins that are present in the plasma membrane. They are: number one, structural proteins; number two, functional proteins; number three, carrier proteins. Three types of proteins present in the plasma membrane. They are structural proteins, functional proteins, carrier proteins. Structural proteins. This type of proteins with lipids play an important role in the structure of plasma membrane. These proteins along with lipids involved in the construction of plasma membrane. So they are involved in the structure of plasma membrane, so that they are called as structural proteins. Next, functional proteins. Functional proteins are mainly enzymes. Functional proteins are mainly enzymes that catalyzes physiological reactions associated with plasma membrane. Functional proteins are mainly enzymes. These enzymes catalyzes physiological reactions or chemical reactions that are particularly associated with plasma membrane. For example, glucose 6-phosphatase is a functional protein which is present on the membrane of endoplasmic reticulum, that is ER. And next one is that cytochrome C oxidase. Cytochrome C oxidase, which is also a functional protein which is present on the membrane of mitochondria. Okay. Next, coming to the third type of proteins, carrier proteins. These proteins involved or play an important role in the transportation of ions and other materials through plasma membrane. Examples for this carrier protein is permease. Galactose permease is the example for carrier protein. So these are the different types of proteins that are present in the plasma membrane: structural proteins, functional proteins, and carrier proteins. Structural proteins involved in the structure of plasma membrane. Functional protein catalyzes different types of chemical reactions or physiological reactions, particularly associated with the plasma membrane. And carrier proteins involved or play an important role in the transportation of mineral ions and other materials. Examples for the functional proteins are glucose 6-phosphatase, which is present on the endoplasmic reticulum, and the cytochrome C oxidase, which is present on the membrane of mitochondria. Examples for carrier proteins is permease. Example, galactose permease. And next, based on the distribution, enzymes also classified into two types: extrinsic proteins and intrinsic proteins. Extrinsic proteins are also called as peripheral proteins. Intrinsic proteins are also known as integral proteins. Extrinsic or peripheral, intrinsic or integral. Extrinsic or peripheral, intrinsic or integral. So let us discuss about the first one, that is extrinsic proteins or peripheral proteins. So these proteins present on either side of the bilipid layer. Extrinsic proteins are present on either side of the bilipid layer. These proteins are loosely attached to the head portions of the phospholipids of lipid layer. Extrinsic proteins are loosely attached with the heads, attached to the head portions of the phospholipid molecules of lipids. And these proteins, extrinsic proteins, are hydrophilic in nature. It means they are water loving proteins. So extrinsic proteins are present on either side of the lipid layer. They are loosely attached with the head portions of phospholipids, and these extrinsic proteins are hydrophilic in nature. When come to intrinsic proteins, they firmly attached and intermingled with bilipid layer. Intrinsic proteins, they firmly attached and intermingled with bilipid layer. These proteins are these proteins have hydrophobic in nature. Intrinsic proteins have hydrophobic in nature. It means they hate water. So in this way, based on distribution, proteins that are present in the plasma membrane are classified into two types: extrinsic proteins and intrinsic proteins. In this picture, you can observe both types of proteins, both extrinsic and intrinsic proteins, very clearly. Here you can see this part particularly, you can see here. This is the plasma membrane. You can see the bilipid layer. Here you can see the dark colored part, which is intermingled with the bilipid layer, which is an integral protein. In the below picture, you can see extrinsic proteins on either side of the bilipid layer. Here you can see these are the proteins, extrinsic proteins. Yeah, this is the bilipid layer. Here you can see this is the bilipid layer. Here you can see peripheral protein or integral protein, and here also you can see two protein molecules, extrinsic or peripheral protein molecules, extrinsic or peripheral protein molecules. In this way, based on the distribution of proteins in the plasma membrane, have been classified into two types: extrinsic proteins and intrinsic proteins. Extrinsic proteins are also known as peripheral proteins. They are present on either side of the plasma membrane, either side of the lipid bilayer, better you can say. Extrinsic proteins or peripheral proteins are present on either side of the bilipid layer. When come to intrinsic proteins, they are firmly attached and intermingled with the bilipid layer. Here you can see in this picture very clearly this dark part, dark black color part is a protein which is intrinsic protein or integral protein, which is intermingled with bilipid layer. Okay, in next slide I am going to tell you about other constituents that are present in the plasma membrane. Coming to the other constituents, small amounts of compounds such as polysaccharides, salicylic acid, DNA and RNA, traces of coenzymes, porphyrins, metal ions, etc. are also present in certain biological membranes. Polysaccharides, DNA and RNA, traces of coenzymes, porphyrins, metal ions, salicylic acid, etc. are also present in certain biological membranes. So in this way, plasma membrane is made up of different types of chemical compounds, lipids, proteins, and other constituents. So with this, I conclude this topic here, that is the chemical composition or chemical structure of plasma membrane. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, one and all. Bye bye. We will meet in next session. Okay, bye.